In this video, we're going to learn TypeScript, React Native, the basics. You'll be able to go ahead and start using TypeScript in your React Native apps. Don't forget to subscribe. We come out with videos every week, so you'll want to also click the bell icon. Let's get started. I'll put all these links in the description below. To get started, you can either create a traditional React Native app using this command, npx React Native init, your app name, and then template, React Native template TypeScript, or you can use Expo. I like Expo personally. It'll work the same in both, but I'm going to go ahead and use Expo for this example. So you'll want to go ahead and open up a terminal and then just say npx create Expo app. Give it a name. I'm going to say Expo TypeScript basics. And then after that, just say -t and then type Expo template blank TypeScript. Click return. You can just say yes to everything. When that's done, it should look something like this. You can cd into your app and open it up in Visual Studio or your code editor of choice. So it should look something like this. Some differences you'll notice right away is instead of it saying app.js, it says app.tsx. But if you open it, you'll notice everything else looks exactly the same. One of the only other differences is you'll notice there is a tsconfig.json. If you open that up for Expo, you'll notice you don't really have to worry about anything. Expo really handles the configuration for you. So if you're using Expo, you don't really have to worry about this. If you are using traditional React Native, it'll show you all the different settings. Really, to get started, though, you don't really have to do anything in here. You can just leave this alone. But if you ever come across some errors and you look it up on Google and it says you should check your tsconfig file, this is the one they're talking about. So it's just good to know it's there, but you don't really have to worry about that for the most part. So before we get started, I just want to emphasize a little bit about what is the point of TypeScript. Really, the whole point of TypeScript is it's trying to help you catch bugs before it goes into production. And so as you're coding, you're going to be seeing a lot more messages popped up, and it'll catch things that traditional JavaScript won't catch until it's actually on your web browser. So here's a quick example. If I say const message equals hello world, and then underneath that, I say message equals 0 or something like that. If this were just a traditional JavaScript file, this error message wouldn't pop up here. It would let you do this, even though you can't really do this. If you did send this to a web browser, it would show errors in your console log, but you could do this in JavaScript. With TypeScript, it won't even let you do that. And you can hover over the error message and see why. And it'll just tell you, you cannot assign to message because it is a constant. Here's another example. Let's say I say let message object is an object. Let's say there is a name and I say TJ, age 33. One of the cool things about TypeScript is once you create a variable like an object, it already knows the properties in that object. Say I want to update the name. Well, as you can see, once I use dot notation, it automatically tells me, okay, there's an age, there's a name in there. And so it makes it a lot faster. I can just see what's in there. And then if I tried to type something that wasn't in there, like message object.gender, if you hover over it, it says property gender does not exist on type. So it'll just tell you this doesn't exist. Don't do this. So again, that would be another bug that is caught by TypeScript. And if you'd like to learn more about why use TypeScript, what's the point of it, I made a video on that. It should pop up on the screen. You can watch that video. It'll explain it more. But let's go ahead and cover the basics so that you can go ahead and start using TypeScript in your app. One of the first things to notice is it doesn't really look that different. The reason is that TypeScript is just a subset of JavaScript. So any kind of JavaScript that you write, it'll still work in TypeScript. You really can just go about creating your apps like you normally would. The major difference that you'll notice is it will give you error messages if you write the code wrong. And also, as you'll see in a bit, you have to declare the type of the variable whenever you're using props. So let's go ahead and get started. So in the root of your project, go ahead and create a folder, call it components. Within the components folder, we'll create something called welcome, and just make sure you always say .tsx instead of .js. if you don't say .tsx, the error messages won't pop up. It won't be TypeScript. You have to always type .tsx. It could cause errors in the future if you forget. So welcome.tsx, we'll create something called pet.tsx and also pet qualities.tsx. You can create the functions like you normally would in React Native. So you could say export default function welcome and go ahead and create the function like you normally would. And in the return, I'll say text, and I'll go ahead and scroll down to this so that it'll import it automatically for me. And I'll say hello Jack. Then we can come back to the app.tsx screen. Let's go ahead and import the welcome. So we'll say import welcome from component/welcome. Let's delete this status bar. I'm not going to use it. And then let's go ahead and delete this. Let's go ahead and put the welcome screen in the view. I'll go ahead and open this up on an Android emulator so we can see what the app looks like. So you can say npx expo start and then type the letter A. All right. And you can see there it says hello Jack, which you can find in the welcome message. So instead of hard coding this in, let's go ahead and pass this name and some other information down as a prop. And this is where we'll learn how to create types. So for the welcome screen, I'm going to say name equals Jack. And let's go ahead and pass down an age too. I'll say 37. And then gender. And for gender, I'm going to make this be a Boolean. If it's true, it's male. If it's false, it's female. So I'll say gender true. And you'll notice it's currently getting upset at us. The reason is we haven't assigned a type to these props yet. And so to fix that error, to get TypeScript to stop yelling at us, in the screen, this component, this welcome component, above the function welcome, say type, and we'll just say something like welcome props equals an object. And within here, we're going to define all the props that should be appearing on this screen that we're going to import here. And so the first one is name, and we'll just declare that this is a string. And you just do it just like that. The next property was age, and we're going to call it a number. That's how you assign the type number to it. The last thing was gender. We're going to assign Boolean to it, true or false. And now we're going to go ahead and import these props. The way you do that is you would say props, semicolon, and then put this welcome props here. And now this error message, as you can see, it went away. So all this does is it's basically another layer of protection. It's now impossible to pass in like a number for name or a string for age or anything else for gender. And I'll just show you what I mean. So say we change the name to the number 40, something like that. Now it'll get upset at us because it says the property type for name is supposed to be a string, so that won't work. So this is sort of just a way to guarantee that you don't accidentally use the wrong data type. So let's go ahead and use these in our app. I'm gonna put braces, and I'll put view here. And I'll go ahead and just say text. I'll say hello, and I'll put curly braces here, and I'll just say props dot name. And now it should show up on the screen. So that's how you pass props down into different components. I'm going to create 2 more lines. I'm going to say I'll say props dot age for the age. And for this other one, I'll say URA. And for this, I'm going to use a ternary operator. So I'll say gender question mark, which means if it's true, I want it to say man. If it's false, I want to say woman. And as you can see, it shows that it is a man. All right, so that covers basic string, number, Boolean, passing those down as props. Next, we're going to cover how to pass down objects as props. So let's go back to our app screen. Within the app, let's create a const called pet name. We're going to have a first and last name within this object. We'll say first name, and it can be whatever you want. I'm going to say Roger. Last name, whatever you want. I'm going to call it Porticus. Yes, that is just a name that I've made up. I don't know if it's real. I'm sorry if this means something in another language that's bad. I literally just made it up. Give a shout out if you're one of our viewers from another country outside of the United States in the comments below. And if this does mean something in your language, let us know in the comments below. That would be pretty cool. We're going to use this in the pet component. I'm just going to show you another way you can create a component. You could just say export, make this an arrow function. You can create it this way. So you can just say equals, and again, we'll say props, and we're going to end up creating types called pet props. Make it an arrow function. Within here, we'll say return. Go ahead and put the brackets. Again, we'll say view. Click enter so it imports it for us. Before we move on, let's go ahead and create our types. And then I want to go ahead and deconstruct this object. I'll show you how to do that too. So under there, we can say again, types, say pet props, and your types is always going to be an object. So no matter what, you'll say object. And our first prop that we're going to have is going to be called pet name. And it is, again, going to be an object. Within that object, there will be a first name, and we'll say this is a string, last name, string. And then I also want to just import something called type. So this is like animal type. And again, I'll say that's a string. So we're going to, this is how you could pass in an object called pet name and also a type. That's a string. And let's go ahead and under here, we'll go ahead and deconstruct pet name so that we don't have to say props dot pet name dot first name, which you could do that if you would like to do it that way. But we're going to deconstruct it to just clean up the code a little bit. So you can say const object first name, last name, can say equals props dot pet name. And this will deconstruct the value of first name and last name so that now in here, we can just say text. We want to make sure to come down here so it'll import it for us. And I'm going to say you own a pet named first name and then just put last name. And under that, I want to put this type. I'm going to say the pet is a props dot type. Okay, and let's go back to the app.tsx page. We'll go ahead and import that here. So we'll say pet, and to import it, if you create the function this way, export const pet, you can import it like this. You could say import and put a object and say pet from components / pet. And so it's yelling at us right now because it's expecting, because we already put these types, it's expecting to receive these props in this function. So if you don't put the props into the function, it'll yell at you. So that's another good thing about TypeScript. Whenever you're creating a new component, a new function, if you expect certain parameters to go into that function, TypeScript will then give you errors if, say, you forget to pass in a prop that you expect to be in that function. So within pet, I'll go ahead and say pet name equals pet name. And also you'll notice it's saying this is missing type. You should have something called type, because in here we created another string called type. So it's expecting a type to be passed down with this function. So let's go ahead and just create one called type. And this needs to be a string. And I'm going to say Komodo dragon. So next we want to give the Komodo dragon some qualities. So we're going to create another component called pet qualities. We've already learned how to just pass in a string, a number, a Boolean. We've now learned how to pass in an object. So we're going to learn how to pass in an array. So let's go ahead and go to our pet quality screen. And since we know we're supposed to type the type of the props, let's just go ahead and do that first. So we'll say type pet qual props equals an object. And within this, we're going to pass in an array full of objects. The way you do that is first say the name of it. I'm going to call it qualities, then say object, and you can go ahead and click return. After the object, put an empty array. So what this does is it lets TypeScript know, okay, you should expect an array full of objects. And within the objects, there should be values. And this is where we put the values here. There's going to be 3 different qualities and an age. So I will say qual1, I'll say that's a string. We'll create these in a second. Qual2 is a string. Qual3 is a string. And then age is a number. So under that, we'll go ahead and say export. We'll use const this time again. Const pet qualities. We'll say props, and the value of the props will be this pet qual props. Make this an arrow function. Say return braces. Say view. It should import view for you. Okay, and this looks wrong because I accidentally forgot to put an equal sign there. So you'll need to make sure to put the equal sign. Now within here, since we're going to have an array full of data, we can put an object here so that we can use JavaScript. And now we can have access to the mapping function. So I'll say props.qualities.map. Within there, we'll put an E and for element, I for index. Make this an arrow function. I'm only going to have 2 elements in this array. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say use an if statement. I want to return different text based on if this is the 0 index or the 1 index. So I'll say if I index is equal to 0, return a text. Within that text, I'll say your pet is, and I'll say e dot qual1, comma, e dot qual2, comma, e dot qual, oops, and I'll put those in curly braces, comma, and is e dot age, years old, and then I'll close that out. I'm gonna go up to view and say word wrap so I can see it better. And it's saying an error. I did something wrong. What's wrong? Oh, I forgot to import text. So I'm going to come up here and say text. And then under there, since we are only going to have 2 objects in here, we know ahead of time. We know that if it's not equal to 0, then it's equal to 1, which is the only other element. So I'll just go ahead and just say return, I'll say text again, and I'll say also your pet is, and I'll just go ahead and copy all of this, paste it there. And for this last part, and is whatever age, I'll say and is still whatever years old. So let's go ahead and go back to the app screen. We'll create this array. So we'll say const, and what did we name it again? We named it qualities. So const qualities equals an array. And within that array, we'll create an object. We'll say qual1, a lizard. So this is the first quality of the Komodo dragon. Qual2, enormous. Qual3, scary as a mother caught her child eating her secret stash of chocolate. And then under that, we'll say age. I'll just say 17. Why not? Then under that, we'll create another object. I'll just go ahead and copy this whole object actually. And for qual1, I'll just say green. Qual2, sometimes yellow. Qual3, potentially purple. And just keep the age at 17. I'll go ahead and copy this array qualities. Come down here. I haven't imported it yet. I have not imported this yet. I'll say pet qualities, enter, and it should import it for me. And it did up there. And I'll go ahead and say qualities equals qualities. All right, there we go. And to make this look a little bit better in the container, I'll say padding 30. I wanted to show you how you don't have to declare a data type if you create the data within the same component. So let me just show you what I mean. If you're importing a property, you definitely have to say what kind of data type it is, or you'll receive errors. But if you create data in the actual component, you don't have to declare the data type. So let me show you what I mean. So we're in the app.js screen. We'll create just something, call it const message equals, we'll say, are these things actually true? No one really knows. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to try to just put this const message in without declaring its type and see if it works. So under pet qualities, let's just go ahead and put in some JavaScript, say const message. Okay, and the error comes because I didn't put in this within a text component. So that's another cool thing with TypeScript, using it with React Native. It knows when you're not putting your text in the text component properly. It doesn't always give that error if you're not using TypeScript. So I'm going to go ahead and say text, and I'll cut this out, put that there. So you'll notice I was able to do that without any error. So if you're creating the variable in the screen, you don't have to declare the data type. It's okay to do that the way you normally would do it. Finally, the last thing I had questions about is hooks. For those of you who like to use hooks, you can use hooks in TypeScript. So let's just go ahead and come to the top of the screen. We'll say import object, use state, and we'll go ahead and create a hook variable. See if it works without causing any errors. So I'll say const final message set final message equals use state. Within there, I'll make that a string, and I'll say, but I'm assuming it's true because I think all lizards change colors. But I'm too lazy to do a Google search to find out if this is true. All right, so let's see if we can use this without any error messages. Again, we'll want to copy a text component because our text always needs to be inside of a text component. And the final message, I'll put it like that. And it worked. So there you go. Hello, Jack. You are 37. You are a man. You own a pet named Roger Porticus. The pet is a Komodo dragon. Your pet is a lizard, enormous, scary as a mother who caught her child eating her secret stash of chocolate and is 17 years old. Also, your pet is green, sometimes yellow, potentially purple, and is still 17 years old. Are these things actually true? No one really knows. But I'm assuming it's true because I think all lizards change colors, but I'm too lazy to do a Google search to find out if this is true. If you happen to look up if all lizards change colors, please let us know in the description below. I still haven't taken the time to look it up. If you finish this video, you know enough TypeScript to go ahead and start using it in your projects. One of the great things about TypeScript too is you really can learn as you go along. You know enough to go ahead and start using it in your projects. TypeScript is very opinionated, so if you ever write things the wrong way or in a way that TypeScript doesn't like, it'll just give you error messages. Then you can just look up those error messages, figure out how to fix it, and learn TypeScript as you go along. Don't forget to like, subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.